This is the maximum PDF document size supported by Adobe Acrobat. It's 15 million inches by 15 million inches to be precise. Basically, it's just a massive square in the core of Germany. It actually gets a little bit of the Czech Republic too. Why anyone would need this, I'm not sure, but I'm glad I have the option. Waiting for the day where we can make a 1:1 true scale of the entire surface of Earth. We could probably get there in 100 years. Out of the 13 original colonies, here are the states that voted for independence, and here are the states, or should I say state, that did not. New York, I guess, did not choose to vote for independence. Did they abstain or something? Wait, Maine shouldn't be included, I just realized that. So the New York delegation abstained because they had not received instructions from Albany, their capital, to vote yet. So it wasn't like the state of New York didn't want independence, it was just like the dude that had the answers that was on a horse somewhere just got, I don't know, lost. So the delegations didn't know what to say, he just abstained. Or perhaps New York should now just be given to Canada. Whatever works. The first phase of the Age of Discovery, or a European baby steps in the Atlantic. So this was during a time where we did not have the full world map drawn out. We were still kind of figuring what was going on. Remember, we also thought that if we head out west, we would reach India. That was the big question. I feel like if I was a person that lived during this time and someone decided to sail this way, I absolutely would not have done it. I would think that's like the fastest way to get trapped in like the Twilight Zone. So finding the Canary Islands off the coast of Africa was definitely a big moment, which was actually still way before we discovered America, but it is strange it took the Europeans this long to get there. I'm going to assume others probably already knew about this island chain. The Azores was probably a much bigger discovery because it was more smack dab in the middle of the Atlantic. Well, not really, but it was more in the middle. And that was actually around the same time we discovered these islands. They still clearly had a very long way to go though, that's for sure. The year every South American country declared independence, and immediately you can see the early 19th century was a big time for this continent. Ecuador was the first to leave in 1809, then Colombia in 1810, then of course Venezuela, so we have like a little Grand Colombia alliance going on here. Then there was Paraguay, which was deep inside of South America. They probably felt pretty safe declaring their independence. Actually, maybe not, because technically this would have been Spanish lands, so that was very brave. Remember that all those places are declaring from Spain specifically. Spain had just everyone leave in the span of like 2 decades. Then the Portuguese colonies saw what the Spanish colonies were doing and they're like, hey, we're gonna join in on that too in 1822. To think Iberia was gonna lose all of this in 20 years. That is nuts. Here are the big outliers though, these 3 places which are often skipped over. We have Suriname from the Netherlands and Guyana from the British. Then of course there's still French Guyana, which is still under France. This is French territory. That's gotta be the biggest chunk of overseas territory that never declared independence. How did France even do this? But then again, there is Denmark and Greenland. Greenland's definitely a lot bigger than French Guyana. Although flat maps tend to make them look way more massive than they actually are. Still bigger than French Guyana though, that's for sure. Also forgot to mention Uruguay, who actually declared their independence from Brazil. That didn't exist, that was under Brazil before. Android versus iOS, which is more popular in Europe? Now there's definitely an Apple alliance going on in the UK, Ireland, and most of the Nordics. I say the Nordics because they have Iceland, but they do not have Finland. They have all of Scandinavia though. Remember, Scandinavia is just Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. There's also iOS supremacy in the microstates of Andorra, Monaco, Liechtenstein, and then Switzerland and Albania. Everywhere else are big ol' Android fans. I actually didn't think Android was winning this much in this continent. Weird to see Switzerland finally choose a side in a war, and then they choose the side that I really wasn't expecting. I mean, that's weird. They're very secluded in those mountains, aren't they? Just do whatever they want. Also, I have a lot of questions about Albania. I feel like that's the thing with Apple. Like, when you're in their ecosystem, you're gonna pull down the whole country. Like, that ecosystem locks you in. It's hard to escape, but once you do, I guess it's like taking off the shackles. I'm actually still trapped by my iPhone. I had an Android. I liked it. I just wanted my phone to be as simple as possible. I think that's the thing. I'm gonna do complicated stuff on the computer. I don't even want to get into this because I know it's dumb reasoning, but I'm gonna do my complicated stuff on a computer. I want my phone to be like the most simple thing imaginable. If I was doing most of my work from my cellular, I would probably be an Android guy. How to say the word library in different languages? Because believe it or not, this word is actually pretty weird compared to everywhere else. Albania has definitely a similar word to it, but almost every other place is going with biblioteca, or I mean, that's the Spanish way to say it. I don't know how it basically looks like biblioteca everywhere. I notice whenever you ask Americans that don't know much Spanish, like name 5 Spanish words, they'll always say biblioteca. I don't know why that has become so popular. What is the use of knowing that word specifically out of an entire language? I wonder if it has something to do with this, just because so many other languages kind of go from that same root. I mean, even out as far as Russia. Of course, we do have some outliers here with Slovenia, Croatia, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and then further out this way, yeah, it's definitely going to be changed up. Dude, this is exactly what I'm saying. Like, why is this I mean, this is what I used to use too. I'm like trying to figure out where that became so popular from. I know there's like movies that said it, right? Maybe it's like the first Spanish phrase that everyone is taught in school. Did the breakup of Yugoslavia benefit or harm your country? Oh boy, here we go. We've got Slovenia with actually 45% saying it harmed the country. Of course, Croatia, who like really led the charge to end Yugoslavia, they're pretty happy with it. Bosnia, however, is not. There was a lot of chaos that happened during the breakup of Yugoslavia in Bosnia. Serbia really wanted to keep Yugoslavia around. 81% believe they are not better off now. Montenegro at 65%. Of course, Kosovo is a big fan of not Yugoslavia. And then North Macedonia at 61% disapproving as well. These are definitely some numbers I wasn't quite expecting. I think Slovenia is the most surprising though. I thought Slovenia loved life outside of Yugoslavia. I mean, there is a good chunk of people that don't know. That's the remaining percentage. Love how Serbia had the least amount of people that reported they don't know. They know for sure. They want Yugoslavia. Only 15% didn't vote. Actually, Kosovo is the same too, but yeah, I understand that. I think the way this question is phrased though is interesting though. The breakup of Yugoslavia benefited or harmed your country? Like, obviously, it would be understandable that the chaos after the breakup would have harmed your country. So you might not want Yugoslavia to come back. If you voted harmed, you're just saying, yeah, like, you know, all the chaos after that was really bad. These numbers aren't necessarily reporting they want Yugoslavia back right now. Maybe it's also a case of rose-tinted glasses though. All I know is I have my shirt that says born in the USA that actually says Yugoslavia, and no one has said anything about it yet, and I'm like so disappointed. I wore it all 4th of July. I think there's a lot of Americans that just don't even know what Yugoslavia is. The income share going to the top 1% as of the last 200 years. To start things off, we have China, which actually peaked in the early 1900s, 25%. Things dropped after the Chinese Civil War, but they are leading back up. Now it's at 16. So 16% of all of China's economy is going to the top 1%. We have France, on the other hand, which has actually been on a steady decline. I'm assuming these plots get more and more detailed because we started doing more and more research about this, like more recently in history. France is only at 9. We have Russia, which actually has some really interesting results this time right here. That was during the Soviet Union, and then you can see it spike up literally after the collapse of the Soviet Union. They're now at 24%. We have Sweden, which was high in the 1900s, and it's kind of been going down, staying down, 12%. The UK, which seems to have taken a pretty big drop in their top 1% after World War I, it's at 13 now. And then there's the US, which is pretty much sat here around 20% their entire existence. That is really shocking, because, you know, everyone talks about like the massive like railroad people or oil dudes around this time. It did start dipping in the 1970s, but then it rose back up. These are just really interesting results because there's so many different things at play here with each individual country. I mean, China is literally technically a communist nation, so this is a little bit weird. Here are the first 5 countries to recognize the US. So obviously we celebrate our independence from Great Britain on July 4th, 1776, but the world wasn't really going to see us like that for a while. It's kind of one of those things where if these places jumped the gun too fast and immediately recognized US independence, and then the British came over here and just crushed the rebellion like instantly, that would make things really awkward, your diplomatic relations with the British. So the places that recognized us during the Revolutionary War, remember that war didn't end until 1783, they're pretty brave. But none were as brave as the country of Morocco. This nation was the first place to recognize us. I mentioned that many times before. Morocco is like our first friend. There was actually a Moroccan-American Treaty of Friendship that was signed only a couple years later. It's actually the longest unbroken treaty signed by the US. The next place was France in 1778. This isn't too surprising considering how France basically carried us to the victory line there. I mean, if it wasn't for them, yeah, more than likely we probably wouldn't have been able to win. Another big country that helped us a lot was the Kingdom of Spain during this time too. They would recognize us in 1783, so that makes sense. But a little bit more surprising, the Dutch and the Swedish in 1782 and 1783. I'm assuming these places had to have seen the writing on the wall like, hey, the Americans are gonna win. Let's get on their good side. Still a pretty brave move to jump in before the American War was over, especially for the Dutch. I mean, they are right there next to the British. Probably didn't make them too happy. The 25 biggest US lottery jackpots of all time is the actual cash value before taxes, because I'm pretty sure the taxes are gonna take like half of it, depending on how much you earned. The 25th on the list was $500 million, but the white bar represents how much they got probably after taxes. This was in California, which is very interesting because this 24th ranking in Pennsylvania had a lot less taxes taken out. Also, when it happened is a big deal too. It seems like if you win more recently, you might have to pay more taxes. This is in 2019 in California. Here's the top 20. The 19th biggest lottery winner, $500 million. That's crazy. As we enter the top 10, we're at $700 million. We're getting up to $800 million. The top 3, $1.5 billion, and number 1, $2 billion. So after taxes, that's about it's like $1 billion. That's an insane amount of money. Considering all the bad things that happened happen to lottery winners though. I don't know. Is it like one of those things where life has to balance out? Like you just had the most lucky moment of your entire life. Now you have to just deal with bad luck forever. It all just evens out. It's a pendulum. It's interesting to see that the US jackpots are going up with inflation. I didn't even realize we have already got to the point where like a billionaire was born out of the lottery. Big thanks to my patrons. I have cloned Drew and I'm now training him to fight the imposter doing these videos. Subscribe to Drew now. John Denver. Australia is real. I am not a aPhatNarwhal.
Traven,
Amateur, Archaeology, Inquisitor,
KirinoIsBestGirl,
LuxembourgLover,
Robert,
the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Mexican
Twickenhamster,
and why am I doing this?